Chapter 179 Wanning. The pair of them reached the edge of the cliff on Flying Flower Isle. Far below, the craggy cliffs lapped the roaring sea, its waves scattering into snow-white flecks of foam as they crashed to the shore. Before them was only the endless sea and sky, and the waxing crescent of the moon. Moran summoned his oath-bound sword and turned to Chu Wanning. "Shizun, how is it that you never learned to ride swords?" "It's not that I never learned," replied Chu Wanning. "I'm just not good at it." "How are you not good at it?" Chu Wanning shook his sleeves out. His expression took on a touch of haughtiness, but his ears had turned red. "I can only fly close to the ground." This somewhat astonished Moran. It required the same amount of spiritual energy to ride a sword, whether you were 1 inch off the ground or hundreds of feet in the air. If Chu Wanning could fly near to the ground, there was no reason he couldn't travel at greater heights. "Shizun, just give it a try. Let me see." He was met with silence. Chu Wanning didn't summon his sword. After a moment, he said with a bland expression, "The reason I don't usually ride my sword is because I believe weapons deserve respect. It's not fitting to step on them." Moran blinked in confusion. He didn't understand why Chu Wanning had abruptly launched into this explanation, but still he nodded. "Shizun is right, of course, but we can't fly lying down or hanging from our swords, can we?" Chu Wanning was momentarily speechless. He glanced up to see Moran looking at him bright-eyed in the moonlight and felt a spike of irritation. "Usually I use the Rising Dragon array to fly if it's urgent." Taken aback, Moran asked, "That little dragon?" "It can get bigger," said Chu Wanning. He felt as though he had saved himself some face, but embarrassment quickly set in again. "However, it was impossible to use that technique during the inferno at Rufengsect. It's afraid of fire." This time, Moran was flabbergasted. "So, Shizun wants to learn how to ride a sword because you want to?" "I want to be ready in case it's necessary." Moran sank into silence. The furious sea of flames and smoke in Ligne had claimed innumerable lives. At that time, Chu Wanning had stood on Moran's sword, watching the hellish inferno devour the commoners below. Entire families had burned to ash, leaving not a single bone behind. Chu Wanning, despite being a great cultivator, had found himself powerless. He couldn't carry a single person out of the carnage on his sword. How must he have felt then? It was small wonder that this man, who had always preferred to ride in a horse-drawn carriage rather than on his sword, had suddenly made this request of his own disciple. "I understand. Don't worry, Shizun. I'll teach you properly." Chu Wanning made no reply, but cast his gaze downward, his thoughts unfathomable. At last, he sighed and raised a hand. "Huaisha, come." A beam of golden light coalesced. Above the serene sea and below the moon, Moran once again laid eyes on the holy weapon that Chu Wanning, in the past life, had summoned only once in their battle to the death. Chu Wanning's killing blade, Huaisha. It was clear at a glance that this longsword suited Chu Wanning perfectly. There was probably no one else in the world more fitting to be its master. It was sparsely decorated, and its body glowed with a golden light of such intensity that it appeared almost white. Brilliance emanated, unhurried and unceasing, from the blade, its light like a blazing fuse, or like grains of white sand scattered across the nightscape. "This is Huaisha." Chu Wanning eyed the blade. "You've never seen it. I don't use it often. Its nature is too vicious." Moran's mood was complicated. After a long silence, he nodded and said in a low voice, "It's a good sword." The night wind whistled past. Moran stepped onto the blade of his own sword. As he shifted his weight ever so slightly forward onto his toes, the sword obediently rose several inches into the air. Moran turned around. "Shizun, try this." Chu Wanning stepped onto Huaisha. The blade rose steadily into the air and carried Chu Wanning in a tight circle. "Not so bad, is it?" asked Moran. "Now try going a little higher." So saying, he coaxed his own sword up until it was nearly 5 feet off the ground. He looked down and grinned at Chu Wanning. "Come up here." Chu Wanning pressed his lips into a tight line. Without a word, he directed Huaisha to draw level with Moran's sword. "No problem at all. See, Shizun, you already know how. Let's—" Moran swallowed the rest of his sentence. He'd suddenly noticed Chu Wanning's deathly pale face, his features rigid and his lashes trembling in the breeze like blades of grass. He looked like he was silently enduring with all his might. After glancing down at the ground, which was less than 5 feet away, Moran stared up at Chu Wanning in disbelief. A preposterous notion struck him. Could it be that Shizun couldn't ride a sword because he was afraid of heights? Moran was at a complete and utter loss for words. This was simultaneously incredibly awkward and surpassingly difficult to believe. Chu Wanning's Qinggong was second to none. He could scale any tower at will and leap from any height on a whim, soaring countless lengths with a single light bound. How could such a person be afraid of heights? But Chu Wanning now wore a dreadful expression atop his sword, his eyes darting restlessly back and forth. As much as he tried to restrain it, a faint panic surfaced on his features. "Shizun?" Moran ventured cautiously. Chu Wanning's reaction was extreme. He jerked his head up at once. The night wind blew stray locks of hair into his face, but he didn't raise a hand to brush them away. His elegant phoenix eyes flashed with annoyance, sparks of warning issuing from behind the wind-blown strands. "What are you laughing at?" "My throat's dry. I coughed." Moran's ribs nearly cracked with the effort of holding back his laughter. "Gotcha," he thought. So Chu Wanning really was afraid of heights. No wonder he'd gone to such lengths to explain himself earlier. He was just trying to rescue his dignity. Well, if Shizun wanted to save his dignity, then his disciple naturally had to play along and provide his master a graceful way out. To tell the truth, riding a sword gets more difficult the higher you go, Moran said. When I first started, I couldn't go much higher than 5 feet either. It just takes practice. You also couldn't go any higher? Mm-hmm. Or were you, who had flown several 100 feet into the air the very first time he'd stepped on a sword, nodded kindly. It might not have even been 5 feet. I was too scared to look down, so it was probably only 3. So low, Shu Monk kicked me back to the ground without any trouble. Chu Wanning's heart settled ever so slightly. He had always been mortified to tell anyone about his fear of heights and attendant inability to ride a sword. But it seemed it wasn't anything to be ashamed of after all. Shizun, try not to look down. Just look at me. After a moment's thought, from his vantage high above Chu Wanning, Moran dipped lower once more. Don't think about how high you are. Just come up until you're level with me. Chu Wanning gritted his teeth and rose higher. With the narrow and slippery blade under his feet, the once warm night wind became as cool and damp as a snake. It squirmed beneath his collar, hissing and flicking its tongue. Don't look down, don't look down. Moran chanted patiently as he held his hand out to Chu Wanning. Come up and take my hand. Chu Wanning was fully absorbed in his task. There's no need, I'm fine. Moran didn't push. He knew Chu Wanning's temperament. If he wanted to do something himself, as long as the situation wasn't dire, It was best to let him have his way. This man, accustomed to being a towering tree, wasn't used to relying on others. He could only make Chu Wanning feel comfortable and at ease by staying at his side and standing alongside him. Moran very much wanted to turn Chu Wanning into gentle and pliant spring water, to crush Chu Wanning with his body, to break him in his arms and melt him into his blood. He was no different from most men in the world. He would always have some unrealistic, frightening desire to take possession of the person he loved so deeply. Such was his nature. These were his instincts. That domineering male instinct made him yearn to lock Chu Wanning up, to spend the endless days and nights entwined, to force Chu Wanning to swallow all of Moran's boundless passion. He longed to have Chu Wanning lying atop a soft bed all day, wreathed in swirling incense and heady perfumes, hidden from the sight of all but himself. He longed for Chu Wanning to spend a lifetime beneath him, as he buried himself within Chu Wanning's warmth, without surcease. He longed for the dark bruises on Chu Wanning's skin to never fade. He longed to transform him into a greedy beast whose hunger could be sated only by the most potent and fiery love-making night after night. But love made the thought of doing these things unbearable to Moran. Because of love, he wanted to treat Chu Wanning with respect. He wanted to see him stride ahead with white robes afloat, to see him fly far afield with sword in hand. He wanted to watch Chu Wanning rise haughtily above the forest, unfurling his leaves and casting out his kindly shade. He wanted to allow him to flourish, even if it meant his branches might be broken in the wind and rain. Love chained his instinct and bridled his beastly desire. It compelled him to lower his lashes and restrain his ardent breath, and demanded that he abide by the rules. It tamed his primal impulse and pulled the frightful fangs from his mouth. In the last lifetime, love had made him possessive, so he'd become selfish. In this one, love made him accepting, and this he became selfless. He wouldn't, as he had in the past, attempt to imprison Chu Wanning or change him. This belated, pure love rendered the man who had once been Taxianjun willing to serve, to spend the rest of his lifetime as Chu Wanning's companion, and no more. Bit by bit, their swords circled higher. At a certain point, Chu Wanning couldn't keep his fingers from trembling slightly within his white sleeves. Even if he didn't look down, his scalp tingled. Moran could tell he was nervous. "Don't be afraid. It's the same as Qinggong." "It's not the same," Chu Wanning replied. "I rely on myself for Qinggong, for sword riding." "You also rely on yourself." "You rely on the sword to ride the sword." Chu Wanning snapped. Moran held his tongue. He was beginning to have some idea of why his Shizun's Qinggong was exemplary, yet he was terrified of riding swords. Chu Wanning wasn't in the habit of relying on anyone or anything. He felt most at ease when he relied on himself and himself alone. The realization made Moran's heart ache. "It's okay, Shizun," he said. "You need to trust Huaisha." Though Chu Wanning remained outwardly calm, he couldn't hide the anxiety and alarm in his eyes. When Moran noticed the light sheen of sweat on his brow and the unsteadiness of his stance, he knew they couldn't go on like this. If Chu Wanning were to fall from his sword now, his fear would only grow. "Let's go back down," he suggested. Chu Wanning couldn't have been happier to hear this. Once they were safely on the ground, he gathered his bearings for a moment, then asked, "How high did we go?" Moran promptly decided to round up. "More than 50 feet. As expected, Chu Wanning's eyes widened in shock. "Really?" "Yep." Moran grinned. "Shizun's pretty impressive. Next time we'll manage 500 with no trouble." The mere notion of so much height made Chu Wanning's already pallid face blanch further. Wordlessly, he waved a hand and stared blankly at Huaisha. After a moment's consideration, Moran added, "Shizun, how about this? I'll take you up on my sword for a lap, so you can get used to it." "You don't have to. It's not like we haven't done that before." "But have you ever looked at the ground from atop the sword?" He had hit the nail on the head. Whenever Chu Wanning rode on someone else's sword, he would always fix his eyes on the wielder's back or on some other random spot as much as possible, using all the power of his imagination to pretend his feet were planted squarely on the ground. Moran summoned his sword again and enlarged it. After stepping on, he turned to Chu Wanning. "Come on now," he said gently. Chu Wanning gritted his teeth and leapt nimbly onto the hilt. "Watch your footing," Moran said. He pushed lightly off his toes, and the sword spiraled upward into the clouds. Chu Wanning closed his eyes without thinking and heard Moran's low laugh in his ear. Shaking off his nerves, he steeled himself and looked down. With this single glance, every hair on Chu Wanning's body stood on end. That rascal Moran had taken him soaring into the highest reaches of the clouds. Far behind them, Flying Flower Isle was receding steadily into the distance. The wind whistled past his ears, and the frigid evening air thoroughly chilled him, even through his robes. Other than the sword, there was nothing else beneath his feet. They flew above the vast ocean, the blue-black waters like the yawning maw of an ancient beast, ready to swallow all passing souls. Frozen lashes trembling, Chu Wanning was about to instinctively shut his eyes again when he heard Moran's voice from behind him. "Don't be scared. Everything's fine." "I'm not scared." Chu Wanning's face was white as paper. Moran chuckled. "Okay, if you say you're not, then you're not. If you're cold or bored, just let me know. I'll take you back to the island." Chu Wanning said nothing. He knew Moran was trying to salve his dignity. After all, a mighty cultivator shivering from cold was slightly more respectable than a mighty cultivator shivering from terror. Moran could tell Chu Wanning was struggling, but unwilling to admit it. His heart twinged. "I'll make the sword a little bigger." He lifted a hand, and the sword expanded to several times its original size. Now he and Chu Wanning could stand side by side. Chu Wanning was drawn taut as a bowstring. In an attempt to get him to relax, Moran said, "Shizun, the fire in Linyi will die down in a few more days. What should we do about the people we brought here when we return to Xisheng Peak?" Amazingly, even in his distress, Chu Wanning seriously considered the problem. "We'll bring them back to Sichuan." "Let's take them to Sichuan first. Once the fire goes out, Linyi will be nothing but scorched earth. No one will be able to live there." "Okay." Moran gazed at Chu Wanning's stark white face until he couldn't bear it anymore. "Should we head back?" "Not yet." Moran directed the sword to grow wider still. Thinking it would be more comfortable than standing, he gestured for Chu Wanning to take a seat, then cast the barrier spell. Looking over at him, Chu Wanning asked, "What are you doing?" "Just a cold-dispelling barrier." Moran's eyes were gentle. "It's chilly up here." Chu Wanning didn't stop him. This barrier was very similar to his own, even down to the glowing haitang blossoms adorning the diaphanous membrane. The principal difference was that Chu Wanning's barrier was gold, while Moran's was a brilliant red. Surrounded by this translucent barrier, Chu Wanning's tense muscles slowly relaxed, and his breathing became more even. Even if he knew the spell did nothing but dispel the cold, it felt like there was another layer of protection around him. Or perhaps it was that the boundless black of the ocean below didn't look quite so unnerving through the barrier. Moran sat down beside him and smiled. "Shizun, look over there." "What is it?" "Do you see it?" He stared in the direction Moran pointed without understanding. Chu Wanning knitted his brows. All I see is the moon. That's what I mean. Chu Wanning was puzzled. What's so great about the moon? It looks the same from the ground. Moran laughed. This is my first time moon-gazing with Shizun. Chu Wanning didn't reply right away. It was only after a long moment, after Moran already assumed he would leave it at that he murmured softly, It's not the first time. What? Caught off guard, Moran turned to look at him. With his handsome features bathed in silvery moonbeams, Chu Wanning's complexion was like the pristine white petals of a flower in the cool night. Behind the dense curtain of his lashes, his eyes seemed to be filled with memories deeper than the ocean. It was so long ago, you've probably forgotten, said Chu Wanning. It's not a big deal. Moran didn't know what to say. He had been alive longer than this version of Chu Wanning before him, and many of the earlier events from his past had lost their definition. Just because Chu Wanning remembered something didn't mean it was also hidden within Moran's heart. He looked at Chu Wanning's profile and was swept by a wave of guilt. But within that guilt, too, blossomed an irrepressible sweetness. He found himself thinking of the brocade pouch, of what he'd wanted to ask yesterday. Why had Chu Wanning kept the interlaced locks of hair and so many old memories? Butterfly Town, Jinjing Lake. During the Heavenly Rift, he had given up his life to save Moran. Why? Moran had never before dared to entertain such brazen fantasies. He thought himself unthinkably bold, irredeemably shameless. But every new discovery over these past few days had only stoked his wild audacity. Why? Shizun. Hot blood surged through Moran's chest. His throat felt dry. As he stared at Chu Wanning, his eyes were bright. He had a sudden urge to move closer, to cup his face and kiss it, to gather his courage and ask, Do you like me? On this sword, between heaven and earth, Moran had a fantastical thought. It seemed as though none of the world's shackles could restrain the two of them any longer, as if all the love and hate of the past had never transpired, and what was between them was as serene and pure as the moonlight streaming through gossamer clouds. He felt as though the small seedling in his chest had grown into a great tree. Its rough roots loosened the heavy, stifling dirt, filling the air with the rich scent of the earth. Noticing that Moran had sunk into a long silence, Chu Wanning turned to look at him. What's wrong? Moran didn't answer. His mind was a whir. He wanted to have him, to hold him, to kiss him. Without thinking, he leaned in. Only then did he realize that, though Chu Wanning had recovered somewhat since he'd put up the barrier, his bloodless lips were still pressed together, and his complexion remained wan. He sat with his arms crossed, gripping his own elbows, his long, slender fingers clenched tight in the ice-cold fabric of his sleeves. Even when Chu Wanning was afraid, he clung to himself instead of others. Moran stared, dumbstruck. The possessive glint in his eyes winked out and rekindled as glimmering motes of light, like the gentle lanterns of fishing boats at sea. He pursed his lips that had yearned to kiss Chu Wanning, curving them instead into a soft, bittersweet smile. He stilled the hands that had wanted to brashly embrace him, and after a moment, touched the back of Chu Wanning's freezing hand. You... Chu Wanning was caught off guard. A faint flush surfaced on his pale face, but he spoke in a low voice, laced with warning. What do you think you're doing? He wanted to yank his hand away, but Moran had already grabbed it and wasn't letting go. Chu Wanning felt a large, warm palm close around his ice-cold fingers. His entire hand was seamlessly engulfed from the back of his palm to the ends of his fingertips. "You don't have to do everything yourself," said Moran. "I'm here. You can rely on me." Up until this point, Chu Wanning had managed to maintain a modicum of calm, but he couldn't miss the emotion contained in these words, no matter how oblivious or uncertain he was, to say nothing of those heart-stoppingly dark eyes gazing at him, solemn and serious, gentle and doting. Chu Wanning's pulse drummed like raindrops in a driving storm, pounding away in the space between his soles. He didn't dare meet Moran's eyes. He jerked his face aside and ducked his head. It was too hot. They were hundreds of feet in the air. How was it so hot? Chu Wanning had always been independent and in control, but right now he seemed to have stepped into a realm wholly foreign to him. His armor had been peeled away, his sharp claws clipped. Faced with Moran's earnest expression, Chu Wanning felt all his usual tricks were useless. This man had pried open his shell and now stared unflinchingly at the trembling, lustrous meat within. Gleaming pearls and salty sweet flesh alike laid bare before his eyes. With his armor removed, this proud and self-possessed person suddenly felt terrifyingly vulnerable. What to do? What was he supposed to say? Moran was still holding his hand, grasping it tightly in his own. Anxious and nervous, Chu Wanning found himself at a loss. The rims of his eyes reddened, and he unconsciously tried to yank his hand away. But Moran tightened his grip at the first twitch. His palm was slightly clammy with sweat. "Don't pull away." Chu Wanning said nothing. Moran had used considerable strength, and his hold was stubborn and insistent. Somehow, Chu Wanning thought he heard a note of sorrow in his tone. Moran's eyes were fiery as he fixed Chu Wanning with a long stare. Finally, voice low and husky, he said, "Chu Wanning, what did you just call me?" "I misspoke." Chu Wanning tensed even more, and his heart raced faster than when he'd stood on his own sword. He wasn't used to this at all. Teetering at the edge of this vast abyss, he mounted a final struggle, making a last-ditch bid to take control of the situation. He looked downward. At least you recognize your mistake. Perhaps you're not beyond." Moran's heart was on fire. Finally, he blurted thoughtlessly, "Wanning." "Saving." Chu Wanning didn't manage to get the last word out. When he heard Moran's last sighing, gentle utterance, his mind filled with a buzzing blankness. He couldn't finish the sentence. Beyond saving. Beyond saving. They had hesitated so long at the brink of the mire that was love. At last, they couldn't resist that final step forward, falling deep into its embrace. Henceforth, they would be hopelessly ensnared, that ache sinking down to their bones. Moran's eyes were fixed on Chu Wanning, and his voice was deep and hoarse. "Wanning, these past few days, there's something I've been meaning to ask you." Chu Wanning watched him, silent. Moran's heart burned. His fingers shook as he gripped Chu Wanning's hands. "No, I won't ask you." Chu Wanning let out a breath of relief, but Moran continued. "I won't ask you anything. I just want to tell you." Moran steeled himself. There was no turning back. With a single deep breath, he summoned all of his courage. "I like you." His heart juddered violently. "I like you. Not in the way a disciple likes a Shizun, but I know I'm being horribly bold. I like you." Chu Wanning closed his eyes. His fingers, surrounded by this man's humid warmth, gradually stopped shaking. How? He had surely misheard. He was so ugly, so harsh, so clumsy with his words. so uninteresting. He was a total fool without a single redeeming quality. Who would like him? I like you. Chu Wanning remained frozen for what seemed like an age. He truly didn't know what to say. His heart was filled with grief. He was thrown off balance. Somewhere within him, he felt both bitterness and dread, yet his mind was curiously blank. He wanted to sweep his sleeves back and snap, "Nonsense!" or "Ridiculous!" as he normally would, but all the words that occurred to him remained stuck in his throat. When he finally unfroze, Chu Wanning mumbled blankly, "I have a terrible temper. You're very good to me. I'm too old. You look younger than I do." Chu Wanning was on the edge of panic. Bewildered and helpless, he said, "I'm so ugly." Now it was Moran's turn to be stumped. His eyes widened as he gazed at the handsome man before him. He didn't understand how someone so beautiful could disparage himself so. Seeing Moran silent, Chu Wanning felt all the more lost and scattered. He dipped his head. "I'm not good looking." Moran stared. "Not as good looking as you." As Chu Wanning muttered quietly, he suddenly felt a warm hand brush over his cheek. He heard Moran sigh, gentler than the moonlight. "Do me a favor. Look into my eyes." "Your eyes?" Chu Wanning asked, confused. Moran's gaze was warm and mild. In his irises was reflected the image of a man in white robes. "Do you see him?" he said. "The most beautiful person in the whole world." Chu Wanning gaped at him. Even as his heart roiled with fearsome waves, his wintry features, not so easily thawed, remained mostly impassive. Moran's hand was damp as he gripped Chu Wanning's palm. "I like you," he repeated softly. It was as though Chu Wanning had been stabbed. His fingers trembled, and after a moment, he let his head fall. The words, "I like you," were like a sharp knife piercing his heart, from which blood spilled in an unstoppable stream. The rims of his eyes were red. Perhaps he had waited too long to hear these words. He'd never expected to have this kind of reaction. He was so fretful he was on the verge of tears. "I'm no good. Nobody's ever liked me." Nobody's ever liked me. Nobody's ever felt happy or proud or lucky to have me. It's been 32 years, and nobody's ever liked me. As Moran heard this, as he watched the man before him with his head bowed and face obscured, a staggering ache tore through his heart, as though it might fracture. Chu Wanning was his treasure, yet he had been hidden beneath the dust for half his life. Moran ached so much he couldn't speak. He didn't know what he was supposed to say. Finally, he squeezed Chu Wanning's hand and said clumsily over and over, "That's not true. That's not true. You have someone who likes you. I like you. Someone wants you. You want it. Don't be so self-deprecating and foolish anymore. Don't speak of yourself as if you're worthless, because you're the best, dummy. Chu Wanning, you dummy. I like you." After a long stretch of silence, Moran asked, "And you?" It took Chu Wanning a moment to respond. "What?" Moran lowered his quivering lashes. I'm really dumb and oblivious and unreasonable, and I've done many unforgivable things." He paused. "Could you like me?" he asked in a small voice. Chu Wanning had already raised his head, but upon hearing this question, he met those soft black eyes, his heart a jumble. Without knowing where he got the strength, he ripped his hand out of Moran's and turned his face away. He didn't nod or shake his head, neither confirming nor denying, but Moran could see plainly that Chu Wanning's ears had turned red, a blush that extended all the way down to his lovely neck, like the stem of a flower. That brocade pouch. Don't say it. Chu Wanning cut in. His whole face was red now. You're not allowed to say it. Moran looked at Chu Wanning's chagrined yet embarrassed, angry yet bewildered face. Light and shadow flickered in his pupils, blending with the moonlight. He shifted closer and grasped Chu Wanning's fingertips again. Chu Wanning was shaking, but Moran's fingers were trembling too. He covered Chu Wanning's slender fingers, and then, one by one, he interlocked them with his own for the first time. Their fingers folded together, their palms pressed close. Blushing furiously, Chu Wanning turned his face even farther away. But this time, he didn't try to struggle free. Holding onto Chu Wanning's hand, Moran finally, belatedly, disbelievingly confirmed that Chu Wanning liked him too. At last, he knew.